Hi, everybody. Welcome today, and thanks for joining ThreatPost for another one of our webinar series. This time, we're going to talk about kind of a critical shift for cybersecurity pros, and it goes beyond just protecting your own turf. This is really about proactively hunting down attackers before they make it onto your turf. So it's a really interesting topic, and it's an interesting mindset shift. And so today we have some experts that are going to help us figure out how to do that. Today we're joined by a squad from cybersecurity who they are some of the best minds in the business, and the idea is for us to offer our audience an opportunity to interact and ask questions to some of our best sources and industry leaders. So as a reminder, up in the right-hand corner of your screen, there's a widget where you can submit your own questions. Please do so early and often, and as they come up, our panelists are going to be watching that closely, and they really want to gear today's presentation toward your needs. This is really a working group for us, and it only works if you let us give us an idea of what it is you're looking for. So please do that. Without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists. We're lucky to have Cohen, and he is a cyber threat intelligence specialist with cybersecurity. Welcome. Hello. Thank you.
Hi, Becky. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We also have Samuk Tendulkar, and he is a director with cybersecurity.
Hello.
Hi, Samuk. And we have Chris Roberts, who is an industry advisor, guru, cybersecurity influencer without the TikTok account. Maybe is that a fair way to position it? Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, definitely no TikTok account. We'll leave that crap alone.
Well, we really appreciate you guys making yourselves available to help us go through this stuff. Before we get going, we want to take a quick poll of our audience. Oh, here's our bios. I want to take a quick poll of our audience. Let me launch this. This will just give us an idea of where you all are at. So it's a pretty basic question. Do you have an active threat hunting program? Yes, no, or we're working on it. So just take a second, and that will help our brain trust here figure out really where the majority of our audience is. We'll just take another couple of seconds. You guys are pretty even split. You're not going to get a lot of help on pinpointing, so.
I'm not allowed to answer it. I can't click. I want to be able to click and have fun.
It's for attendees only.
Let me click. Let me click.
All right, I'm closing. Okay, 36% said yes, they have one. 35% no, don't have one. 29% working on it. So we've got a wide range. And without further ado, I am going to hand this over to Samuk, who's going to kick us off and is going to get us started. Let me go ahead.
Becky, thank you. Thank you for that kind intro. And that's a really good array of people we have. People who, a third almost, who are actually actively doing threat hunting, third, who are looking to do it, and a third who may do it in future. So fabulous. So hi everyone, again, Samuk Tendulkar from cybersecurity, and I'm really excited for today's webinar. I'm excited because really it's the speakers and the format, right? We have two really amazing speakers, people who know this topic intimately. They have firsthand knowledge, and believe me, I'm gonna like dig deeper into that. So I'm excited about it. The second is the format. Look, this is supposed to be conversational. I really want it to be conversational, and because of that, slideware minimal, demos only as necessary to support a topic. But really what I want to do is I want to let these two speakers experience shine, and anything that gets in the way, I do want to clear it off. Oh, there's a third reason why I'm excited, and that's you. It's your involvement. We just saw the poll. I have one more poll coming up later because we want to take this information and tailor the conversation to where you are at. So with that said, let me get rolling. I do want to share with you answer the first question, which is like, who is Cybersecurity Guild? And then we'll get into the rest of the topic. Can you guys see my screen? I suppose you can, right? All right, I think I can see. Cybersecurity Guild. Look, this sentence says it all, this phrase, right? Know what's out there. There is the deep and dark web. It's your forums, open and closed. It is your instant message groups. It is like some of the Twitters and everything in between. And there is a lot that goes on out there. It is our job and our business to collect that information, analyze it, and make it available for you to help stop threats, to help hunt. And as and when there are any breaches, we want you to be the first one to find out when things get breached. So just a question, like, what goes on the deep and dark web? A lot. Not gonna get into every single data point, but there are 67 credit cards offered for sale every single minute. That's like more than a credit card every second, right? Malware links, 162, almost 3 every single second. And there are many malicious chats which take place on Telegram. So there's a lot that goes on, and we want to make it available for you. What we have is a AI and automation which is industry leading. Because of it, it gives us, we are the most powerful threat intelligence available for deep and dark web. Our collection of leak credentials is greater 7 times that of anyone else. Our collection from deep and dark web sources is 10 times. You can see read the numbers. Net, we have the biggest collection, and more importantly, we have the fastest collection because of our automation. We package all these into 3 products. Number 1, dark feed. It is our indicator of compromise feed, which you can plug into your security apparatus. SIM, SOAR, TIP, name what you may. We have connectors built with most of them, so you can actually have the indicators flow from deep and dark web right and for you to raise the alert. The second, portal. You'll see bits and pieces of this today from Idan. Portal is our unfiltered access to the largest collection of deep and dark web. You have it. Once you have that, you can see, really get into deep and like do pivots and like really start hunting. Last but not the least is our Dve Score. We take all the data that we have, and based on the attacker interest and intent, we create a score for which vulnerabilities are going to be exploited in near future. So with that said, that's what we have. And I'm going to, at this point, kick off into the conversation. So 1 second, let me just make sure I do this too. All right, good. Can you guys see me? I'm back. All right. Let me start with you, Chris. Before I can get rolling any further, I see you have a NSA on your sweatshirt. I want to know what's the story behind it.
So this is one of those ones that comes from inside those 4 walls. There's a gift shop on the outside and there's one on the inside. This one comes from inside the 4 walls. So it was a gift, and it's a fun one. Let's just put it that way, shall we?
Okay, wonderful. So NSA, your background in threat hunting and everything. So I'm sure you have experience with deep and dark web. Take us behind it. Tell me, like, why should most of us be thinking of deep and dark web? What can we expect to find? And why does it exist? Is there like good reason for it to exist?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, when it was originally founded, should we say, it was purely for good reason. It was the ability to communicate behind the scenes, especially for, you know, at-risk groups, individuals, teams, and people coming in and out of countries. Now, obviously, that works for at-risk individuals and people. I mean, you've got everything from political to religious to all sorts of other things. So great, now you have an underlying architecture well, guess what? Everybody else is going to jump on it and go, hey, now we can use it to also circumvent controls, manage, and then go communication. So now we have, there's it's the chicken and egg. Did the Intel community come at it first, or did the, hey, I need some freedom of communication come at it first? Take your pick on that one. But now you have this underlying architecture where there is a belief of, near impossible ability to obviously track it. We obviously know a little differently. Level of communication between individuals and between people. So you can use it for good reasons, use it for research, use it for all sorts of other things, but obviously now we can use it for nefarious reasons, which unfortunately is where we see the adversary and the attackers coming into play. If I've stolen something from you and I want to sell it to Idan and I don't necessarily want to reveal myself, well, can I do it in a way that doesn't guarantee me anonymity, but at least gives me the best level of protection I think I can get at this point in time? And the answer is yes. So now you had that original set of transactions, and then people went, hey, instead of doing onesie twosies transactions, let's build a business out of this. All of a sudden, now you see the carding companies pop up. You see the companies providing the carding services, providing the hardware, the software, the technology, the systems. And then you end up with this entire framework, no different than we have in the clearer side of the world. You have this framework for an adversarial side of the world, which does everything from provide you with the IRC channels to be able to move, your attacks back and forth, provide you with the communication, provide you with the mechanism to get in, provide you with the way to get out. Literally, in some ways, all you have to do is push a button and you're kind of there. It's bolt and play and plug and play together. So it's an amazing industry, and a very, very, very fluid one, and unfortunately a very fulfilling one for a number of people.
Interesting, thank you. By the way, this is the first time anyone has referred to that, like there's no guarantee of anonymity on deep and dark web, and I suspect that has something got to do with the t-shirts and sweatshirts that you wear.
Maybe a little bit. We, like anything, it's anonymity is only good as long as you know the systems you're working across. And as we all know, we all do a lot of research on things, and we all own all sorts of assets. So yeah, every time, it's like anything. Anytime you go anywhere near a keyboard, never ever think you're being anonymous.
Fabulous, fabulous. Idan, so do you have a story around like your sweatshirt, or interesting, how did you get into deep and dark web?
Sure. So, the truth is, and I'm on the Intel team at Skill, and I've been an analyst for over a decade. So, really I was involved more in the physical security space, focusing on those threats on the ground, whether it's militancy and how it can affect militancy, civil unrest, and how it can affect business continuity for organizations around the world. So I think when we talk about threats in general, I think I wanted to look at a more holistic approach where, yes, there's the physical threats, but there is a whole nother part of the world, these threats that can be more widespread and can impact organizations in ways that might be more under the radar or unseen. So I think, and I think we certainly see this in the last year and a half, what happens when a workforce has to be at home. What are the threats to the organization? So in general, I got into this, into this field to build on that, build on my own threat experience, and encompass places where a lot of these threat actors might be planning, coordinating, transferring weapons, drugs, and more.
Interesting. Is there a Google for deep and dark web? How do you kind of find stuff?
Sure. So, I think a lot of times, when we talk about the dark web specifically, I think that phrase sometimes, can be a catch-all. I like to use the word underground, but when we talk about dark web, we're talking about Tor, the onion router, where this is a specific router that you download, and you have to know a direct URL to find a specific site. These aren't pretty URLs like Google, google.com. sometimes they're 25 characters. And while some of these places, some of these sites want to be found, for example, a underground marketplace that wants to sell illicit goods, it wants vendors to be there. There are others that may want to stay slightly more under the radar. So there isn't really a Google. There's people that provide different lists of sources that are out there, but the truth is they come up just as quickly as they come down, whether it's being shut down by law enforcement, competitors, or just not having the infrastructure really to keep those sites in place. Yeah.
Do I face a risk if I go through all the trouble that you outlined, right? Go to Tor and I start searching my company's name or my username, my credential, whatever it is on a few of the sites. Am I exposing myself? Am I at risk?
So let's think when you go on Amazon.com and you're clicking around and conducting searches, or you talk and all of a sudden you see an ad on Facebook for something that you were talking about. I think we have to keep in mind that when we're dealing in certain types of networks on the dark web, the administrators of these forums are able to see what you're searching for. So if you're somebody that's working at a company and you're looking, for example, for your exposure, and you're asking certain questions that maybe aren't in the lingo, or the syntax that people utilize on the dark web, that raises red flags as well. So there is a certain aspect where you put yourself at risk when you're utilizing when you're gaining access to these sources.
If I might inject in here, we always talk about this in a very abstract way, and I think for maybe even some of the people that are listening in on this one, it's still maybe a bit of a hard concept to grasp. Think about this. In most cities, now if we take a US-centric approach, actually we don't have to, we can probably take a global approach. There are parts of a city that you're happy to go to during the day, and probably even in the evenings, go out for a nice dinner in the evening, go wander around the streets in the evening, go shopping, all this kind of good stuff. But there's other parts of the city that you're in that maybe during the day it's not too bad, but the evening you kind of want to keep your pedal to the metal and drive through there as quickly as humanly possible. You don't really want to stop there for petrol or gas in the American term. You really don't want to stop there and actually jump out and ask for directions and a number of other things. So if you think about it, that's probably the best way of separating it, which is, can you go through the deep and darker side of the internet or the underground? Absolutely. Do you really want to be getting out and knocking on the doors, asking for directions and questions and pulling stuff in? Probably not, unless you are A, armed to the teeth, or B, exactly to Dan's point, you kind of know your way around there, or you are a known entity. So if you put it in a very, very physical term, it is really the difference between like the shall we say, the less desirable neighborhoods and the more civilized necks of the woods that we all live in.
That's a really good analogy, Chris. I also know people who stumbled upon material that you don't necessarily want to be exposed to, or kind of puts a burden on you, like human trafficking and other things, which suddenly there's a responsibility which you have when you can see things towards law enforcement. So that's a really good way of articulating of what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I think there's a way, we're talking about this. There are ways to get, to get around this. How do we insulate ourselves? How do we actually, what are ways that we can protect ourselves? So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show an example of how you could do that. So are you guys able to see this?
Yep.
So let's take this example, and this is a search query within the 6-Skill portal. So we talked a little bit about the language that people typically use on the underground. And one way to kind of find what you're looking for is to utilize their language. So this is an example of a search within the 6-Skill portal where no admin of a forum is able to see what you're looking for. You can, of course, replace this with domains, basically any other search. And what we can see here is a search for RAT, a remote access Trojan. This is malware, for example, that could monitor your text messages, open your open your camera. The words FUD, where I think when people hear FUD, they think fear, uncertainty, or doubt. However, on the underground, that slang is really used for fully undetectable. So malware that antivirus vendors don't see or haven't detected yet. So we can conduct this type of search, and then we can go into the results of one of the searches and kind of see what the data looks like. So what you can see here is an example of how do people share, how do people share information on the underground? How do they advertise? So here's an advertisement for a recently promoted remote access Trojan, where they provide a screenshot of the admin portal from it, as well as some capabilities as well. So I think when when we try and think of the underground and how to insulate yourself using something that is like a Google of the dark web, where you're not directly on there, can help you get to what you're looking at, looking across a number of sources, since there isn't that Google. So you can conduct a search and look at all these illicit sites. And then you're also able to take a deeper look and also see, what about malware that maybe people are sharing a link to download that item. This is a way where a lot of these items are proliferated on the underground, so you're able to see people sharing those links as well.
Nice, very nicely done. And I also noticed that there's a translate toggle on the top. So I imagine like the languages like Russian, Chinese, Farsi, language which I personally don't speak easily, or you can translate that. By the way, there is a really interesting question which came up here from Fred. And I'm gonna ask that to start with Chris here. Don't you need to develop a persona when you poke around on dark web? If so, what type of persona do you need to develop for dark web?
I think it's, so there's definitely some places where you don't need it. You can literally go in and search. But for the good stuff, like perfect example would be 0-day forum. So there's a number of us, I'm sure, have access and all sorts of interesting stuff into like 0-day forum and a whole bunch of the Carter forums. For those, you will need not just a persona, but you'll obviously need the email address that goes behind it, the account, the system. You'll need history. And using your Google account, or for God's forbid, somebody uses their blasted corporate email account. And I have seen that happen before. Bless their little cotton socks. But yeah, so you almost need to know your way around from not just going into it, but it's like, okay, where do I set up an anonymous email account? And we mean anonymous email account, or 2 or 3 or 4. Where do I set up maybe other accounts? How do I do this? How do I get myself known? So yeah, the persona needs to be there. Now, do you need to go in there and sneak in there and be the criminal? Not necessarily. You can be the researcher, you can be the contributor. If you look on the hacktivism sites, so these would be the ones that want to basically go burn down the likes of, Monsanto and various other places. You can be a contributor. You can be it in the physical side, exactly to Edan's point. A lot of this translates into the physical world. You can also be a digital contributor as well. So there's definitely different personas and ways, but you do need to build up a level of profile and a level of account and a level of accessibility. Communication's got to be in there. And you can do that as an individual, or, we look at the stuff that Cyber 6-Skill's done, you have the ability there to lean on the experience and the knowledge that team brings to the table and go, okay, you can be my persona, I can harvest the results from it, which is kind of useful.
Fabulous. So essentially what Idan just showed, that you don't have to develop a persona, you just need to see how to use the Google-like interface, so you can do your own research. You can focus on researching as opposed to developing personas.
So, I mean, a perfect example, I mean, we use it. I mean, we use the technology, and, I have two different ways. Obviously, I go in my own different way to the darker side of the world, numerous different personas, but for some of the work that we do with some of the high net worth clients, I don't want to have to go and develop a specific set of personas to go deal with all that shenanigans. So we use it directly and query directly, and we get the data we need out of it, which is rather useful.
And I think I'll just also chime in there. I think also, Chris is an expert in the field and has a lot of experience with his own personas, but I think also, for a need for dark web or looking on these sources, something like this lowers the barrier for entry, really. And that's kind of what we're trying to establish.
Well, I mean, add to that, exactly to Samantha's point, which was, is there a Google for this? And the answer is not really. Exactly, Idan, to your point. I mean, there's Evil on there, there's Wikipedia on there, there's a bunch of different engines. What I like about what Six Skill's basically doing is you're bringing everything into an umbrella where you can ask the darn thing the same questions. Actually, you can ask it more complex questions than you can ask Google in the first place. You've got the ability to ask it, as you showed in the demo, a whole set of queries that say, hey, look, I want this with a bit of this and a slice of this. And by the way, I kind of want my partridge in the pear tree to go with it. Now give it to me, please. Much easier to find those needles in the haystacks that obviously we're looking for when we're building intelligence, an intelligence packet for an organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, when you're research in general, you're looking through a lot of data points. What's the most efficient way to slice and dice through the data? Whether it's utilizing certain types of filters or upcoming marketing phrase here, but machine learning models to find what you're actually trying to look for.
Yeah,
this is a really good conversation. I'm gonna jump a bit deeper, do a few more clicks down here, guys. And so we talked about deep and dark web, and we have alluded to the different threats. I think threats are important to know, but I think what I'm interested in kind of finding out is like, how can I go deeper? How can I go to the originator of these threats, the actors? How do I do that? And more, number one, like, what is the value? So let's go back to Chris and like being the industry expert here. Chris, what's the value in like going and finding about the adversaries really?
Oh, okay. So I got two sides to this one. There's the positive side, which is you can potentially better understand tactics. So we all talk about tactics, techniques, and procedures, the dreaded TTPs. So let's say I'm chasing down a rabbit hole and I start to see maybe code I recognize, or to Idan's point, I suddenly see maybe a remote access system that's like, hey, I recognize that from somewhere else. We all leave fingerprints behind. No two ways about it. Some of them, in my case, are only on red color at the moment. We all leave fingerprints behind. So can I start to piece together those bits of the puzzle to go, I understand these tactics, I understand this group, therefore potentially I might know what's coming next, or I might know from if I'm doing incident response. If I'm doing IR and I'm actually looking at what's going on the darker side of the world, or I've seen a breach and I back into it, can I understand the tactics? Can I understand maybe if I have to negotiate, what are my negotiation options, if any at all? What are my chances of getting data back, if anything at all? If I get my data back, will it also be sold on the darker side of the internet 6 months later? What is the history of this group that I'm dealing with? So that's one side of it. The other side of it is attribution. And that's a lot tougher. That's a lot tougher. We all talk about, being able to put attribution in place, or even knowing if data's out there and all these other things. So knowing the actors, knowing maybe the history behind them, being able to start mapping. We all think about mind maps and data maps. Who are they connected to? Who are they dealing with? And again, look at some of the technology that Cyber6 has put in place. It's nice to start to make some of those connections and understand and basically build up a better profile as to who's maybe targeting specific industries. what kind of adversaries are coming up against my company, you know, be I industrial, financial, whatever. So it's really useful to understand that sometimes, because then you can maybe better understand how to defend. You know, nothing's perfect, but at least you stand a better chance of going, to Edan's point earlier, do I have to look more on the physical side for my defense? Or am I having to look at more endpoint detection side of it? Do I have to look better at how my users interact outside the business? So there's all sorts of different useful pieces that come from obviously understanding what's outside your own four walls.
And I think as part of that, Chris, you know, when we talk about the different threat actors and trying to understand them, there's clearly a lot of different motivations for a threat actor. So you know, you mentioned anonymous before, so we have to think that we have ideologically driven actors operating. We also have a good segment as financially motivated threat actors. You know, those are just two types, but like when we talk about, you know, the dark web in general, people have such a wide variety of motivations for why they're on there. A lot of it be the learning aspect. Yes, there's the drug vendors, you know, narcotics, you know, the purchasers, people searching for malware, script kiddies, and there's no doubt plenty of law enforcement and security researchers and government agencies on there as well. But how do we actually like dive deeper into those actors? You know, somebody posts something. What's behind that? Is there a trend behind you know, the specific piece that they've spoken about?
That's a really good point, and it's tough because I mean, exactly to your point, you're not sure if you're. I mean, no different than in the open world that we deal with. You're not sure if you're dealing with actual intelligence, you're dealing with counterintelligence, you're dealing with somebody's fluffy, fuzzy kind of hope for the best intelligence. And again, the useful thing about being able to pull those threads and understand the threat actors is also being able to understand what they've done in the past and who they maybe are and are not associated with.
Exactly, and there is a way to that there is also a way where you can actually do that within the you know, within the six skill portal as well. So
Done. It's like, oh, there you are.
Perfect. There we go. There we go. Yeah, I recognize that.
So here's what's an actual data point. You're able to do this for any threat actor that posts on a site. So I think, you know, Chris mentioned attribution, and I think certainly from a law enforcement perspective, that is what people are after, also in general. But how do we find those little crumbs of data points? So one way would be, is this actor maybe utilizing another alias in another forum? Our system is able to pick up on that information. Why is that useful? You know, you can start to see different trends. Maybe they're more active in another forum that you weren't familiar with. That is one thing. The other thing, when we talked about the motivations and Chris talked about, well, who else are they interacting with? I think when somebody's building a case, it's very useful to see, well, who is in their network as well. So you can see here is a social network analysis, which is mapping the interactions that they've had with other people. Now you can see that there's some larger circles here. This is how the six skill system believes there might be a you know, a more reputable threat actor. So that might also lead to another way to kind of look at who else might be part of this, alongside answering the questions of, you know, are they ideologically driven, financially motivated? What hacking tools are they provided? Also, what you know, what's the time of day that they're posting? You know, people are utilizing these sources. They want to maintain their anonymity. However, if they're maybe only posting in a certain time of the day, that might point to certain geographical regions where they are. And then going more granularly, you know, if you look at one post that they have, you might want to see their activity over time as well. So these are just some of the ways where you can kind of take a deeper dive into the threat actor as well, and start answering the who, what, where, what really motivates them.
So I'm going to ask a question which just came up here from Mr. W. Kind of really interesting. So the reference here is to Alphabet, right, which got shut down. And the reference is like, when these things shut down, do you still keep a track of their history, or these people just disappear and these aliases just go away? What is the best practice, and how does 6GIL does it? So maybe we start with like Idan, and like tell us how does 6GIL address it, and like maybe Chris, you can outline like what happens when something gets shut down.
Sure. So I think we see this a lot, but I think Chris was talking about how long it takes to build a persona, and then somebody that's put an effort in a persona, maybe a reputable seller of leaked databases, for example, and their source gets shut down. A new source will pop up, somebody will fill the vacuum, or maybe their activity will shift somewhere else. They will have to find different ways to maybe prove that they are that old, that old persona. So, for example, let's say Alphabet shut down. That person has already provided their contact information with their Jabber account, different ways that people reach out to them. That might actually still be kept. So somebody could use the 6GIL portal and search for that crumb, that email address, that ICQ account, the Tox ID, whatever mode of communication they utilize. Sometimes it's in their best interest to maintain those, even when sites get shut down, to kind of keep that reputation there.
So as Chris said, like even on deep and dark web, not just privacy, but nothing ever gets deleted. Things always get found one way or the other. Chris, any thoughts to, sorry, go ahead. You were saying something.
No, I mean, I think we're looking at it with obviously digital currencies, especially with like the non-fungible tokens and all the artwork stuff. I mean, some of the stuff obviously I do outside of the cybersecurity stuff is work on that, and we are working to decloak as much of that as possible. I mean, we all leave fingerprints, and with again, this is you take a look at why would you use something like this, because that it used to be a needle in a haystack. I mean, let's face it, that's what we were looking for. With the amount of data that keeps on getting shoved across the entirety of the internet, it's pretty much become a needle in a hay barn at this point in time. I mean, it's ridiculous. So to the hey, we shut a version. We'll just call it a version of Alphabet down. Just everybody probably also needs to remember that just because it's whack-a-mole. And one of the most favorite ones was Pirate Bay. That was hilarious. It's like, the feds are like, we've shut Pirate. No, we haven't shut Pirate Bay down. Yeah, we've shut it down again. No, you don't. No, guys, you're not going to shut the damn thing down. The challenge is yes, will the federal authorities seize the site? Absolutely. Will they understand where it is? Quite probably. Will they be able to harvest the data behind it? More than likely. So that honestly is where some of that anonymity starts to get stripped away. As well as, I mean, there's some pretty well-known cases out there now where, I don't know, we advertise telephones, specifically, secure, ultra-secure telephones to be used by adversaries, and then we obviously ran the damn network behind the scenes on those things. So there's all sorts of different things that go on. So the whole anonymity is a really, really long rabbit hole to work your way down.
And I think also, Chris, on top of that, it kind of makes me think of, you see news, you sometimes see news of an arrest of, a hacking group or a phishing campaign. A lot of these people are also providing, we call it like malware as a service on the underground. So they're also letting people utilize their tool sets to conduct operations. So while the maybe creator of that initial tool set may have been arrested, there's a lot of other people that have the technical know-how that have utilized the tool where they haven't been arrested. They might create their own tool and advertise it as well. So, when we hear something has been shut down, you have to keep in mind that a lot of other people have probably gained the technical know-how from those tools as well.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. No two ways about it. Yeah, there's we see it with antivirus. Somebody comes up with an amazing new way to circumvent controls, and all of a sudden you got 1,000 variants inside, the next 24 hours. So yeah, it's a little challenge.
So I know we are at 2:40. So Becky, do you mind teeing up the second poll? And I think I'm gonna
Not mind at all.
Please, I know we have 45 minutes. If you need to drop, please do. I do want to take the conversation to a different area, a bit more of proactive approach, which is vulnerabilities and CVEs still continue to be one of the biggest vectors for attacks. And I want to get really thoughts from Chris and Idan on those parts. So if you need to drop, please come back, watch this segment. I also have a few more questions which came from people, which I do want to ask at the end. So apologize for running over, but I think this is really fascinating conversation.
Okay, are we ready to launch our poll?
Please do, Becky.
Okay, we want to know, how are we prioritizing patching? And I think the dartboard is a particular totem for this conundrum. So let me go ahead and launch this, and maybe Chris can talk a little bit about, sorry.
There we go. No, that's a poll results.
Oh man, you guys.
It's amazing. You get 4 technologists, and we all have our own fun set of challenges on how to run this darn stuff. Nope, still got the results.
Penny's reviewing. I'm sorry. I think we're going to have to talk through this poll. I think we've got a little bug here. I apologize. But let's talk through it nonetheless.
No worries. So Chris.
Yeah.
What's the state of the art? What are we doing wrong that it still is one of the top vectors? Why? I mean, for me, it's like deja vu all over again. And we can't stop talking about vulnerabilities and CVEs and the patching. Why are we where we are?
Because I think because we're still reactive. I mean, if you think about it, we're still, unfortunately, for the most part, we wait to get hit before we react. Rather than, and I always, again, we go back to the human analogy. And my human analogy goes back to about 9,500 BCE. So at that point, we have these things called the walls of Jericho, amazing little things put up there to support, all sorts of against the winds and the rains and everything else, and eventually humans. And to begin with, everything hit the wall fell down, then rebuilt the wall, and eventually somebody was like, hey, how about we look over the top of the wall to see what's coming? And so they peeked over the wall and they were like, I say, there's some chaps coming with a trebuchet. Should we be worried? And then, somebody flicks it and goes, trebuchet, distance 300 meters. Oh, crap, it's 200 meters away. Yeah, we need to be worried. And so they started to look beyond the wall. Well, now we fast forward to the digital era, and we're still behind the wall. We still say, hey, I've got a firewall, I've got intrusion detection, I've got this stack of gear. I spent a lot of money on this damn stack of gear, and I'm sitting behind my wall. And we wait for somebody to beat the snot out of us before we do something about it. That's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is both Idan and both of you hit this one, which is one person comes up with a new vulnerability, and 100 other people go, hey, I like that. Let me do a variation on it. Very rarely, if ever, is a defensive system going to be able to cope with that effectively. Because if you think about it, I come up with the idea, I start to use it. I get an effective use out of it for an extended period of time. Eventually, some bright spark bloody researcher goes, hey, this sucks, raises it as a flag to the company. The company spends 6 months with lawyers denying that it's ever a problem. Then eventually somebody says, yes, it is. Then 3 or 4 months later, they come out with a patch. And so you've got this crazy time span from like Idan coming up and saying, hey, I find a problem in this software, to a patch being put out there. You've an amazing time span often for somebody to actually just go hog wild with this vulnerability, walk their way through an entire network, and nobody knows they're even there. So between us not being proactive and us honestly being way behind the adversaries from understanding where they are, we find ourselves chasing CVEs and not really understanding why we keep patching every damn week.
And when we talk about proactive, you know, a lot of the discussions on the underground, people are following the news. People are discussing the news. So when a vendor comes out and talks about, you know, a vulnerability, you need to patch this now. The reaction on the underground is then almost very, it's like a double-edged, these announcements are almost a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
where within like, and I know the Microsoft Exchange servers, within 5 minutes of that
Oh,
announcement, people
yeah.
are sharing coding repositories for scanning tools to look into this. So that's one thing. That there's way too many CVs out there. There's new ones, too many come out every day. However, when you're dealing with looking at all the new ones that you need to patch, what about all the old ones as well that have gone to the bottom of the queue? So I think oftentimes we think like with this prioritization problem, unless you're very special, you're not going to be able to patch everything. So
I think
Yes.
adding to that as well, you think about the complexity. I remember standing on stage talking about this the other day. It shows my age. Once upon a time, we had 3 tiers. We had web, application, and database. That was it. It's kind of nice, simple. You put the web server out there, crossed your fingers, hope for the best. The application handled everything, and the database just sat there serving things up like, you know, the wait staff kind of attitude. Now we've got 20, 30, 40, 50 layers of abstraction between you, the end user, and the data sources, multiples thereof. Because we've got virtualization, we've got 6 different flavors of blasted cloud out there. We have all the Kubernetes, all the containers, all the other things that are out there. Each one of those has unfortunately got its own set of vulnerabilities, which means it also has a potential kink in the system and in the armor. And then you add in third parties. Once upon a time, we actually kept hold of our data. Now we hand it out like, you know, candy on Halloween. And so you have all these third parties that as a company, I don't fully understand the risks. And I sure as hell can't knock on everybody's door and go, hi, can I pen test you? Again, you look at where maybe cybersecurity comes in play. I don't just want to look at my profile. I want to look at, hang on, I'm handing data to Edan and his company. Let me just take a quick look and see if his passwords are sitting out there. Let me see if his development team's sitting out there. Let me see if anybody's targeting him. So now I can understand the risk of me handing data to him that he might not even be aware of.
Cool. So Idan, do you have something to show? Like, has
yeah,
cybersecurity made it easier for people to get in front of the CVEs and CVE problem?
I would, and I'm sure Chris has an opinion about CVSS scores. So I think a lot of times when people are looking at CVEs, they're focusing on the CVSS score. The CVSS score, you know, it's a score that's trying to, you know, provide what's the severity if this impacts your organization. Now, you know, that amount is kind of, it stands in time. It's focusing on impact, not necessarily the probability. So when you have so many different items to look at, where do you really begin? So what SixSkill is doing in this space, are you guys able to see my screen?
Yep.
Great. What SixSkill is doing in this space is providing our own scoring metric, which is trying to predict, based on the last 90 days of activity, what are the prospects of an exploit in the upcoming 90 days. So you can see that this is a CVE from 2017, and you're able to see you know, what the CVSS scores are. However, you know, it's somewhat interesting that right now, that something from 2017 might still be generating interest on the underground. So within the SixSkill portal, you're able to look at different attributes, for example. Ultimately, people oftentimes want to know, is there an exploit code out there, or is there not? Is there, you know, has it been utilized in an anonymous campaign? And you're able to look at those as well as see the different coding repositories around it. You know, when we look at this problem on a grand scale, we're able to dive deeper into the sourcing as well. But when we look at it, you know, from the lens of what about me, my organization, you're able to also see these. Sometimes people use different scanning tools, and you're able to take a look. What about all the CVEs, all the software that my organization is using? Where do those sit in the cyber landscape? And this can kind of help, you know, jumpstart that process, looking to see, well, what's being said on the underground now? Why right now something from the past? Why is it generating all this interest? Is this CVE part of a string of many CVEs that you can put together to conduct an attack? So that's kind of one way where we can, you know, you're able to utilize the 6-skill portal to take a deeper dive and see directly, you know, in your face that raw data.
So we are at the end of like the prepared the flow, but there are so many questions that I think I would be remiss if I don't at least pull 2 of them for our experts out here. I'll start with Chris. Chris, this one comes from Mark. Are there open source tools to manage dark web searches?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, there's an entire list of them out there. There's a whole bunch of OSINT stuff that's out there, and it's not bad. Again, it's not bad, but it's, yeah, I mean, I used to use them. I mean, you know, for everybody that wants to research my background, I've built companies like this before, and then I've gone and helped agencies build more toys and things and bits and pieces like this, and they're great. They take you so far. The challenge with anything, you now have an ability to look for that needle in a haystack. The problem is being able to actually deal with the data that comes back, understand it, manipulate it, look at it, get it into a report, and unfortunately a whole bunch of other things that go with it. A lot of the open source tools, and I'm guilty, I've got a couple of tools out there on this subject out there, and maintaining them is a pain in the bum. It really, really is. And then maintaining, you know, the entry nodes and the X nodes and the nodes and the proxy servers and all the stuff that goes with it, it's a challenge. And it's kind of like, okay, did it, and I'm going to move on to something else. So there's an amazing list from like 2012, and if you go through it, like 2/3 of the tool, half the tools or so aren't there anymore. But a lot of us maintain tools, open source Intel tools. There's some amazing resources out there. Hit me up afterwards. I'll point you at some. But if you want something that's got a little bit more strength to it, and you want something that's got a little bit more, how should we say, polish to it, then this is part of the reason I'm hanging out here.
Cool, perfect, thank you. That's kind of like really from the ground floor. You know, you kind of like, it feels like you have felt the pain out there. There are quite a few questions which are very much product related. So guys, if you have product related questions, please contact us on cybersecurity.com, and we'll be glad to kind of like get your hands on the product and answer the questions. But there is this question which just came out from Sean. Let me start with you, and this is the last question, guys. We'll wrap it up for this. I'll start with you, Idan here. Does this solution alter the CVSS to fit the environment in which it was deployed? That is, if RAT is installed, air gap, blah, blah, blah. Like how does 6-skill Dve Score interplay with CVSS score?
Sure. So I mean the 6-skill score, you know, the scoring metric, it was trained on a machine learning model that was based on exploits that occurred on real organizations. Now, there's a lot of different data points that go into how our score changes over time. For example, certain prominent actors mentioning it might change the score. There's no like one item that really changes it, but in general, you know, there's plenty of 6-skill CVEs where we have a score where there isn't even a CVSS score yet. So there is also that lag time in between, you know, when that announcement is made and when there is a CVSS score. but the data might show that it's already, repositories are being shared on the underground. People are talking about it, but there isn't yet a CVSS score. So it doesn't necessitate, it doesn't require a CVSS score for the 6-skill score.
Fabulous, fabulous. Gentlemen, both of you, this was terrific. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope for those who are listening, this was a conversation. Becky, thank you for bringing the insights on polling and just kind of marshaling this entire webinar. Really,
I'm sorry about the second poll, but we did get a lot of good answers that I think will be interesting for you guys to look at. And I also want to say your questions, even if we didn't get a chance to talk about them here, will be forwarded to our panelists. And you can get in touch with me if you would like to get an email address for any of our panelists. I can absolutely connect you for additional follow-ups.
fabulous.
Thank you, Cybersecurity, for helping out our little working group here and keeping us going. We really appreciate the expertise and the time.
I have to say, I'm going to get a sweatshirt inspired by Chris Robert that says FOMO, because I know I will never be in the four walls of the agency. And
in the same font, though, with the seal, yeah.
No, you know what you want? Actually, what you want is, it's the fun one. We were talking about this at a meeting fairly recently, and there's a few of us that have done like the trifecta: the farm, the fort, and the Pentagon. So you almost need one on the back, like with the trifecta. You need the trifecta one. That's the one to get. That'll be the fun one.
Maybe next time. But gentlemen, thanks a lot for those. I know there are many questions out there. Please contact us at cyber6guild.com. We will answer all of them. We will route them to the right expert, Chris, Idan, or even some others as well, and we'll get them answered. Again, contact us. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for dialing in today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great one, everybody. Thank you.